Ladies, we need to talk. And yes, I'm gonna say it plainly. Stop being nice to men. Now, before you go canceling me, hear me out. I'm not saying be rude. I'm not saying be cold. I'm saying stop confusing being nice with being a doormat. There's a version of nice that isn't kind. It's just scared to lose someone, scared to set boundaries, scared to be misunderstood as too much. And that version of nice is not serving you, it's hurting you. All right, let's dive deeper into something that often gets overlooked, but is absolutely crucial. You see, for so long, many of us have been told that if we're just nice enough, if we're polite, accommodating, and never rock the boat, then love will come knocking on our door, and it feels safe, right? Being nice feels like the easiest path because who wants to be the difficult one? Who wants to upset someone or risk rejection? So we put on that friendly smile. We say yes when we want to say no, and we soften our edges to fit into the mold of what we think will attract a man. But here's the truth. Being nice isn't the same as being valuable. They are two very different things. Nice is often passive. Nice is sometimes silent. Nice can mean you're fading into the background, shrinking yourself, dimming your own light just so someone else can feel comfortable. And the problem is, when you do that, you're not showing your true worth. You're not showing who you really are or what you truly deserve. Think about it for a moment. If you were a man looking for a partner, what would really make you pay attention? Would it be someone who agrees with everything you say, never challenges you, and constantly puts your needs above her own? Or would you be drawn to someone who stands firmly in her own power, who has clear boundaries, who knows what she wants, and isn't afraid to ask for it? Who shows up fully alive and engaged in the relationship, rather than just existing to make you comfortable? Men aren't falling in love with nice. They're falling in love with value. And value isn't about being passive or overly agreeable. It's about knowing yourself, honoring your needs, and having the courage to express them. When you show a man that you have standards, that you respect yourself, that you're not just another person he can walk all over or take for granted, that's when you become truly magnetic. Now, this doesn't mean you have to be harsh or cold. It doesn't mean you stop being kind or warm-hearted. But it does mean you stop confusing nice with being someone who's willing to sacrifice her own happiness or self-respect just to avoid conflict or to gain approval. Because the moment you start doing that, you're essentially telling a man, I don't value myself enough to stand up for what I deserve. And sadly, many men will respond to that by giving you less than you deserve because they sense they don't need to meet higher standards. Here's the thing. The right man, someone who's genuinely interested in building a healthy, lasting connection, he's not intimidated by your standards. He's not turned off by you being clear about what you want or don't want. In fact, he finds that incredibly attractive. Why? Because it means you're not just a passive passenger in your own life. You're a driver. You're engaged. You're confident. You know your worth, and you won't settle for anything less than what's right for you. When you operate from a place of value, something beautiful happens. You don't chase. You don't plead. You don't give away pieces of yourself just to keep a man around. Instead, you become a woman who naturally attracts the right kind of attention because you're not offering crumbs, you're offering a full, rich life with all your unique qualities and boundaries intact. That's powerful. And I know this isn't easy, especially if you've been programmed to believe that being nice, always agreeable, always putting others first, is how you keep love. It's what you were taught growing up, or maybe what you've seen in your family or your circle of friends. But here's what I want you to understand. Being nice is not the same as being loved or respected. And the way you treat yourself sets the tone for how others will treat you. If you're constantly being nice in a way that sacrifices your own feelings, your own time, your own energy, it's not kindness, it's self-neglect. And self-neglect creates a cycle where men stop seeing the real you because you're not showing up fully for yourself. And if they can't see the real you, they can't connect with the real you. Instead, they connect with a version that's shaped by fear and the need to please, and that's never sustainable. So start seeing your niceness through a new lens. Ask yourself, am I being kind because I respect myself and others? Or am I being nice because I'm afraid of losing someone, or being alone, or being seen as too much? Because if it's the latter, you're not serving your own heart. You're protecting your comfort zone at the cost of your happiness. You deserve to be valued for who you truly are, flaws, edges, quirks and all, not for the version of yourself that's been watered down to avoid conflict or rejection. Being valuable means showing up fully and honestly, even if it feels risky. It means trusting that the right people will love you not despite your strength and honesty, but because of it. This is how you create a relationship built on respect, trust and real connection, not on convenience or fear. And once you embrace this, once you stop confusing nice with valuable, everything shifts. Your relationships change, your confidence soars, your sense of self-worth skyrockets. So stop shrinking, stop dimming, stop being nice just to be liked. Instead, stand tall in your value. Because when you do, you don't just attract any man, you attract the right man. Remember this, being valuable is the foundation of lasting love. Never forget it. Let's talk about something that's really important but often gets missed, how being nice without boundaries can actually become a kind of transaction. I want you to imagine for a moment that every time you say yes to something that doesn't sit right with you, every time you go along with something that doesn't feel good, you're not just being generous or kind, you're actually making an emotional trade. You're exchanging pieces of your self-respect, your time, your energy, and your happiness, hoping to get something in return, usually love, attention, or approval. And here's the kicker, that's not love. It's not connection, it's an emotional bribe disguised as niceness. When you do this, you're sending a message, not just to the man you're with, but to yourself, that your worth depends on how much you can tolerate, how much you can give up, how much you can sacrifice to keep someone interested or happy. And the problem with that is, you're putting yourself in a position where love becomes conditional. You're saying, if I'm nice enough, if I'm agreeable enough, then maybe he'll like me. But what you're really doing is trading your boundaries for affection, and that never ends well. Think about it. When you say yes to things you don't want to do, when you ignore your own needs just to avoid conflict or please someone else, you're creating a pattern where a man learns he doesn't need to meet your needs because you keep putting his first, no matter what. And over time, this dynamic becomes unbalanced. You become the giver, the fixer, the one who always compromises, and he becomes the taker. It's a dangerous cycle that leads to resentment, exhaustion, and feeling invisible. This isn't about being selfish or demanding, it's about self-respect. It's about understanding that your emotional energy is valuable, and that you don't have to hand it out for free just to keep a relationship alive. When you set boundaries, when you say no to what doesn't feel right, you're not rejecting the person. You're actually honoring yourself and inviting them to meet you in a place of respect and equality. Here's where many people get confused. They think boundaries are harsh or unkind, but boundaries are actually the foundation of any healthy relationship. They're like the rails on a train track. They guide the connection and keep it moving forward without derailing. Without boundaries, you're left wandering in a fog of uncertainty, always wondering if you're enough or if you're doing the right thing. And when you don't have boundaries, you often end up trying harder and harder to prove your worth through your niceness. You become the person who overgives, who says yes to everything, who sacrifices sleep, plans and feelings just to keep the peace. But peace that comes at the cost of your happiness isn't peace at all. It's a slow erosion of your spirit. I want you to realize something crucial here. You don't owe anyone your approval or your energy just because they want it. You owe that first and foremost to yourself. And when you start protecting your emotional space, you give yourself the chance to build relationships that are mutual, respectful, and nourishing. You stop settling for crumbs and start expecting a full meal. You stop hoping for affection and start commanding it by being clear about what you will and won't accept. The truth is, love that's built on this kind of transactional niceness isn't love, it's a contract. And contracts can be broken, but love built on respect, on boundaries, and on mutual care, that lasts, that grows, that feels like home. So when you catch yourself agreeing to something that doesn't feel right, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this because I want to, or because I'm afraid of losing him? Am I saying yes because it aligns with my values, or because I'm worried he won't like me otherwise? When you answer honestly, you give yourself the power to choose differently. You start breaking the cycle of emotional bribes and start building something real. Because the moment you set boundaries and stick to them, something magical happens. You not only protect your heart, but you also teach the men in your life how to treat you. You show them that you're not a person to be negotiated over or taken for granted. You're a partner to be respected, cherished, and loved fully. And that, ladies, is the difference between being nice and being authentic. One is about bending and shrinking to fit someone else's expectations. The other is about standing tall and saying, this is who I am, and I deserve to be loved as such. Remember, boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges. They create space for honest communication, trust, and deeper connection. Without them, niceness becomes a lonely place where your needs are ignored and your heart is left waiting. So stop trading your boundaries for affection. Stop using niceness as a way to earn love. Instead, protect your space, honor your needs, and watch how the right kind of love shows up. One that's earned through respect, not negotiated through sacrifice. Because when you do that, you don't just find love, you find freedom. Let me be really clear about something that's so often misunderstood. When you're in the early stages of dating, or even in a relationship, there's this temptation to become what you think a man wants, to mold yourself, adjust your opinions, your interests, even your personality, just to fit into what you believe will keep him interested. Maybe you've done it before. You laugh at jokes that don't land, you agree with things you don't actually believe, or you hide parts of yourself because you think they're too much. And you do it because you want to be liked, because you want to avoid conflict, because you're afraid that if you show too much of yourself, you might scare him away. But here's the truth. The right man isn't looking for a blank slate. He's not looking for someone who loses herself to become a version of what he desires. What he truly wants is a partner, a real person with thoughts, opinions, passions, and yes, boundaries. Someone who can stand beside him as an equal, not someone who disappears into the background just to keep the peace. When you change yourself to fit what you think he wants, you're not building a relationship. You're building a mirage. You're creating a story that isn't real, and that story can't last, because at some point the truth of who you are will come out. Maybe it's a small thing, like a difference in opinion, or maybe it's something bigger, your dreams, your values, your quirks. When that happens, if you've been pretending or hiding, it creates confusion, disappointment, and sometimes resentment, not just for him, but for you. The problem with becoming a mirror for a man's desires is that it's exhausting and unsustainable. You start losing your sense of identity. You might even begin to question who you really are, because you're so used to fitting into someone else's expectations. And that's dangerous, not just for your relationship, but for your self-worth and happiness. You don't want a man who loves the person you pretend to be. You want a man who loves the real, your authentic self, with all your strengths and vulnerabilities. And the only way to attract that kind of love is to show up as that person, unapologetically. This means it's okay to disagree. It's okay to have your own interests, your own opinions, your own way of doing things. In fact, it's necessary, because that's what creates depth and connection. When you bring your whole self into a relationship, You invite him to do the same. You create a space where both of you can be seen and accepted fully. Imagine a relationship where you don't have to pretend or perform, where you can say I love this, and also this isn't my thing, where you can share your passions without fear of judgment or dismissal. That's the kind of relationship that lasts, because it's built on truth. It's also important to understand that when you stop molding yourself to fit someone else's expectations, you stop attracting the wrong kind of attention, because often the men who are attracted to someone who constantly changes to please them aren't looking for a partner. They're looking for control or convenience. They want someone who won't challenge them, who won't bring complexity or realness into their lives. But when you show up as your full self, you naturally filter out those kinds of men. You create space for someone who values you, not for your ability to be agreeable, but for your courage to be authentic. This isn't about being stubborn or refusing to compromise. It's about being true to your core. Compromise happens when both people bring their whole selves to the table and negotiate with respect. It's a dance, not a one-sided surrender. And here's something else. Your authenticity is your power. When you stop trying to be what you think he wants and start being who you truly are, you become magnetic. There's a confidence, an energy that comes from being aligned with yourself. That kind of energy is irresistible because it's real. So don't be afraid to show your quirks, your opinions, your passions, even if they don't match his. Because the right man won't just tolerate those things. He'll celebrate them. He'll be excited to learn from you, to grow with you, to experience life alongside you, not because you fit into his mold, but because you bring your unique shape. Remember, love isn't about losing yourself in someone else's expectations. It's about finding someone who loves you exactly as you are and encourages you to become even more yourself. Show up fully. Be real. Be you, because that's what true love is built on. Let's get honest about something that happens all the time in relationships, especially early on, and even more so when we're trying to be nice. We tell ourselves, I'm fine, when we're clearly not. We laugh at jokes that sting or make us uncomfortable. We agree to plans or compromises that drain us emotionally or physically, even though deep down, we know it's not what we want. And we do this not because we don't have feelings or opinions, but because we're afraid of rocking the boat, afraid of being seen as difficult, or afraid that expressing our truth will push someone away. But here's the hard truth. If you're not honest about how you feel, you're not really in a relationship. You're in a performance. You're acting out a role designed to keep the peace, keep the other person happy, and avoid conflict. But it's costing you your authenticity, your connection, and ultimately, your happiness. When you say I'm fine, but you're not. When you smile through hurt, what you're really doing is sending a silent message that your needs don't matter. And that silent message doesn't just go unnoticed. It trains the other person. It teaches them that they don't have to pay attention to what's really going on inside you, because you'll never tell them otherwise. And over time, that leads to emotional distance, frustration, and feelings of being invisible or misunderstood. The problem is, many women believe that keeping the peace by hiding their true feelings is a kindness, or even a necessity. They think, if I show what's really going on inside, I'll be seen as too much, too sensitive, or too demanding. But suppressing your emotions isn't kindness, it's self-neglect. It's putting the other person's comfort above your own emotional well-being, and that's not sustainable. Being honest about your feelings isn't about blaming or attacking. It's about saying, this is how I feel, and giving the other person the opportunity to understand you better. It's about creating space for real connection, where both people feel seen and heard. Think about it like this. If you don't express what's really happening inside you, the relationship becomes a guessing game. The other person has to interpret your silence or your forced smiles, and inevitably, misunderstandings happen. You might feel hurt or ignored, and they might feel confused or defensive. That cycle can wear down even the strongest connection. But when you start speaking your truth, gently, clearly, and respectfully, you shift the dynamic. You invite honesty in return. You build trust because you show that it's safe to be vulnerable. And vulnerability is where real intimacy lives. Now, I'm not saying you have to share every little frustration or complaint all the time. There's a way to be honest that's loving and constructive, not hurtful or accusatory. It's about owning your feelings without blaming, saying, I felt hurt when this happened, instead of you hurt me. It's about expressing what you need without making the other person wrong for not giving it to you immediately. This kind of honest communication takes courage, especially if you've been used to hiding your feelings to avoid conflict. But it's the foundation of healthy relationships. Without it, you're building something on shaky ground. And here's the beautiful part. When you start being honest about your feelings, something shifts inside you too. You stop carrying the weight of unspoken emotions. You feel lighter, freer. You stop pretending to be fine and start living authentically. That authenticity becomes attractive because it shows strength and self-awareness. It's important to realize that your feelings are valid. Your emotions are signals from your inner world, telling you what's working and what's not. Ignoring them doesn't make problems disappear. It makes them grow quietly beneath the surface until they erupt in ways that are harder to manage. So stop thinking that hiding your feelings is protecting the relationship. Often it's doing the opposite. It creates distance, confusion, and resentment. Instead, choose honesty. Choose to be seen fully, even if it feels scary, because the right person will want to know the real you, not just the polished version you show when everything seems fine. When you practice honesty, you also teach yourself to trust your feelings and your voice. You build confidence in expressing what you need and want. That confidence is magnetic. It changes how you show up in every interaction, not just romantic ones. Remember, love isn't about pretending everything is perfect or suppressing your truth to keep someone happy. Love is about being seen, accepted, and loved for who you really are, feelings, flaws, and all. So the next time you catch yourself saying, I'm fine, when you're not, pause. Ask yourself why you're hiding your truth. Then choose to speak up, because your truth deserves to be heard, and your heart deserves to be